Welcome to the Pump and Dump channel for another video. This time doing another transaction in the theoretical model portfolio. So the idea here is to sell the Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company. It's not necessarily relating to anything in the business that I think is negative. It's just relating to opportunities that are at hand. So there was the earnings report out today. It didn't necessarily bring anything in that really surprised me to think that the company materially improved or that it deteriorated whatsoever. But I do think that it looks okay at this point in time. I think it's probably still goes higher, but for me it's served its purpose at this point in time. It's kind of like you need to think of stocks as kind of a placeholder where you think there's some upside until you find something better, and this is kind of the case here. I want to buy CNX resources for the theoretical model portfolio, so of course the transaction has to be made, selling Goodyear and buying CNX resources. I think also here it's a question of what do you think or what do you know is likely to lead to a higher valuation in the future, and with CNX resources I have a very clear picture as to what will lead to a higher valuation, but with the Goodyear Tire Rubber Company I'm not 100% sure. So with CNX resources, there was a press release out today. CNX announces a 13% increase in proved reserves, 9 to 9.55 trillion cubic feet equivalent of natural gas. And if we go through here, of course we can see what it means. Organically they added 2.247 trillion cubic feet, which is about 4.5 times what they produced in 2020. So essentially they had a mine life of, or not mine life, life of asset of about 15 years. And you could say, well, they've increased it to about 20 years. Now, of course, in 2020, early 2020, they had a similar press release where they increased their proved reserves, and it led to like the reserve going from 15 to 18 years. But by the time the annual report came out, that shrank back down to 15 because the prices were lower. And so yeah, this is kind of how it goes. And here we can see also they mentioned the CNX midstream acquisition that they did in 2020, leading to structurally lower CNX operating costs, which is very important when we go through how the summary here is affected. We can of course mention this here, but it's not necessarily as important. Extensions discoveries, that's what's mentioned at the top here. That's very positive. Performance revisions, that is relating to the CNX midstream transaction, that 1.432 trillion cubic feet kind of, I guess, became economical. And then price revisions and others, this is relating to annual pricing. 2020 pricing suggests that so and so many cubic feet of your reserves are economical. Plan changes, I don't necessarily know how this comes about. Maybe it's instead of going left they go right, and that leads to them losing this. And production, of course, so that's kind of how they come to net 955. If we go down here, just looking at the benchmark pricing that's used for the SEC valuation, we can see here clearly that there is the NYMEX gas price that's 198.5. I think it was 230 last year in the annual report. So we'll see, of course, the reserves shrinking down to who knows what based upon that pricing. And with the with the numbers we see here, I mean, it's mentioned that this is as of December 2020. There we go. So this probably should be the table we see in the annual report. And given that that's a substantial increase, I saw that Cabot Oil and Gas increased their proven reserves by only 6%, which is of course not as good as 13%, but it is what it is. And yeah, so just to explain the idea, the investment rationale here with CNX Resources is that going into 2022, when the annual report comes out, all the downward revisions due to price revisions in the last 2 years, I would say, will come back. not necessarily in exact amounts, maybe in greater amounts, maybe in lesser amounts. So not 100% sure, because when they increased their reserves by 440% with this organical drilling, this might be like 600% if you have much higher pricing. And so going into 2022, if the natural gas price can stay as it is looking right now on the futures curve, then the reserves should grow due to price revisions. And this is kind of the thing that I am going for with CNX Resources. What I'm betting on is that they will have a much greater reserve than they have now, for sure, and that will lead to the market attributing them a higher valuation, and the management may even say that given the increases, they should go ahead and increase production, because last year, I think in the third quarter, maybe around there, they mentioned that they would not be increasing production in 2021 despite the higher prices. And that of course has to do with logistics relating to like midstream assets to get natural gas to market, but it also has to do with management wanting to have a fixed let's say fixed 15-year life of asset, and that's kind of what they're building the company around, it seems, having 15 years of reserves. So that's kind of the idea, that in 2022 they will increase production based upon increased reserves. I mean, if they get like 15 trillion cubic feet, let's say, then obviously you would expect them to produce a bit more rather than just having a 30-year life of assets. So that's kind of how I see it with CNX Resources, why I like it so much. And therefore, of course, we're going to include this into the theoretical model portfolio. I'll just bring up the pricing of the stocks just to make sure that they are accurate. So as we can see here, purchase price, let's put the correct numbers in. CNX being bought at 12.56 and Goodyear being sold at 13.49. I have it here already. As you can see here, I have a $16 target price for CNX near term, $40 in 2-year time frame. This is an approximation. It will probably emerge eventually, but I'm thinking that 40 is possible, and 2023, if pricing for natural gas in 22 is not that good, it could fall back to 24. So this is kind of how I'm thinking about it, is that the 2-year time frame taking us to 40 is where it should go. So as we can see here, we already have Goodyear shares that we need to now take to zero. First we need to, of course, take the amount out. So we sell here, and then we buy here. And then we have to, of course, include the proceeds from the sale, take the shares down to zero, and then we maintain this 979 as it was beforehand. And then going into CNX, need to of course take the amount and divide it by the shares, by the price to get the shares. That gives us this current valuation. Of course, that drives our profit and loss up because we got shares for nothing, so we have to pay for them. And there we go. So we'll pay for them. Oops, that didn't work out as intended at all. So again, we got the shares. We need to get to minus 131. Oh yeah, this is the reason. Need to get the correct price. That was what I was doing wrong. And now we can take this down, pay for it, so to speak. And then we get back to this same P&L as we had before when I started the whole thing. So yeah, this is the idea. It may work out in the long term, but not in the short term. I mean, CNX could fall back down to 10. I don't know what would necessitate it falling down to 10. There's nothing negative really, apart from yeah, maybe how they present the reserves in the annual report, but the quarterly earnings report I think was okay. It was not necessarily a game changer. It came in line with what I had in my model. It took a few cents off, that was it. And yeah, that's kind of how it's looking. So we'll see how this goes, of course, in the future. And with that said, as always, it's not investment advice or recommendations to buy or not to buy any of these stocks. You may follow this or you may not follow this, but ultimately, if you don't know what you're doing or why you're buying something, it can be very challenging to hold on to it when it's down, and it's very difficult to sell it when it's up. So always keep that in mind. And of course, if you have any questions, comments, or opinions, you can leave them in the comment section. And if you like the content, don't forget to subscribe, and have a good day.